Hello, and welcome to another edition of In the Garden with Susan. And today we have a really special show. I have Doug Peterson with us, and he is from bcamaranth.com. And maybe some of you know him. He's on Facebook on BC Amaranth. And so he is an expert. Oh, well, I think he's an expert in amaranth. And so, welcome, Doug. Thank you for being with us today. And maybe we could start out and get into a bit of the history of amaranth.
Thank you, Susan. Good to be here with you. Amaranth has been around for about 8,000 years. It was cultivated by Aztecs and Incas in Central and South America. It was 80% of their diet. It's a powerful food. It was popular until the time the conquistadors came over from Spain. They weren't too happy with the ceremonies the Aztecs performed, where they'd pop amaranth, mix it with honey, form it into patties or cakes, then pass it around and eat it. They thought their Catholic ceremonies were being mocked, and they forbade them to grow it. So they had harsh penalties, and amaranth fell out of popularity for 500 years until it was rediscovered in about the 1970s, and the people started to grow it again. It was just kind of hanging around in ditches and in the woods and wherever as a weed. And now people are starting to pick up on it and grow it again. So, yeah, that's...
So was amaranth a sacred food?
Well, kind of, I guess. They sort of worshipped it as, a lot of prehistoric type people, maybe not prehistoric, pre-Columbian. They considered their food source to be worth worshipping. So harvest time, they'd have a little ceremony and make alegria, pass it around. Like I say, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And the conquistadors were not happy to see them mocking their communion. So
wow. So what inspired you to start growing it?
Really, it's kind of hazy. I'm not sure what gave me the idea, but I tried some a bunch of years ago. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I was living up the coast in BC, and it was just I found it was too wet and cold for a plant like amaranth, and it didn't work out, so I let it go. Now I'm back in Vernon, and I have an ideal climate here for it between Vernon and Kelowna. So I wanted an alternate food source to adopt the climate change. And the Okanagan's been experiencing droughts and heat waves and desertification. Prairie crops are struggling, and costs of growing grain is always increasing, and they're having challenges with it too. So I just thought something like amaranth would be a good thing to try, and turned out it was, because it just loves the climate here. It loves the heat, and it doesn't need much water. It's extremely drought resistant.
That's excellent. So how long have you been growing it now?
I've been growing it for 3 years as a major crop for me. I've always grown vegetables and so on, but I got into a big field. I grow an acre at a time now. I started out with a teaspoon of seed, which gave me about a pound of product after harvest. And I don't know, a teaspoon of seed was maybe 100 plants, and I ended up with about a pound of seed. I planted most of that the next year, and 1 acre gave me 200 pounds of seed. So I'm pretty pleased with the returns on that.
That's amazing. So is there, when you start the seed, is there any techniques to growing it?
I find by trial and error, and I that if you give it some nice soil to start in and water to germinate, that it'll pop up when it's warm, and pretty much takes care of itself for the rest of the season. Now, it'll grow in almost any soil. I've been growing it in clay with no extra, say, fertilizers or any kind of real tilth to the soil, just an old hayfield turned over, and I used the clay that was there, excuse me, moisture and warmth, a little water. It loves the heat, and it's very hardy. It just, once it gets growing, it doesn't want to die. It won't die after it sprouts. I tried to transplant some into pots. It was about 2 feet tall. I transplanted it. It wilted, and it was almost dead. I was sure it was dead. I left it in the pots like that for a couple of weeks, and it came back to life, and it grew like a dwarf, and it had flowers and seeds and the whole works. So that was only about a foot tall, but they usually grow to 7 or 8 feet. So I was pretty impressed with it.
That's tall. Yeah, that's really tall. So sorry to interrupt, but when you plant the seed, do you just go in and broadcast it into the field?
Well, I've been very cautious and careful with the very little seed that I have had. So I developed a small seeding tool implement. I used a broadcast fertilizer spreader, one of those things you hold in your hand and crank, and the fertilizer comes out the bottom, whips around.
Yes.
So I pulled the bottom off that and put a funnel on it for the seed to go down, and I taped a plastic tube attached to a stick to keep it straight, and just pull the trigger on the inside of the seed box, and just let a little bit of seed go down the tube and into where I want to plant it, and just move along. And that's how I've been planting it for a couple of years. But I have enough seed now. I'll be able to let it go into rows. So I'm just going to plant it into rows. I've been planting it in plastic film. Well, it's called plastic film, but it's biodegradable plastic. It's made from corn, and I lay rows of it with an irrigation tape down the middle. I punch holes in it, and I plant the seed in it. And I give the seed some water, and away it goes. So
that's amazing. So you don't it doesn't need to be transplanted or started early. That's a seed that if you're growing it, you can just go put it in the garden exactly where you want it.
Yeah, as soon as it gets warm.
Okay.
You can even put it in ahead of time, but it doesn't really sprout until it gets warm and it has some moisture. So it's like any other seed, it just likes to be warm and wet to start growing.
Nice. And once people put it somewhere, is it going to be there forever? Will it come back for them every year?
Well, it has to dry out for the seed to fall out of the tops. So that usually takes anywhere